So we begin our preparation for the Haggadah by studying 4 pages, consecutive pages in Harerei Kedem in the name of Rav Soloveitchik. And we'll start, if you have page Reish Chaf Aleph on the bottom right, it says Vayihi Sham L'Goy. Some have a girsa of Vayihi Sham L'Goy Gadol. Now let's emphasize the word Sham. The word Sham here refers to Mitzrayim. And this is kind of an oxymoron, very paradoxical, that Dafka Sham in Mitzrayim, with all the suffering and the subjugation, the slavery, we became a goy, or if you have the girsa, goy gadol. Malame Chahoy Yisrael Mitzuyanim Sham. Klal Yisrael were exceptional there. Take note that the word Mitzuyanim, the shorish of the word is tziyun. Like, for example, we put a marker on a kever so that we notify the Kohanim that they should be very careful not to come near. So the word tziyun, a marker, means something different than anything around it. So you have, let's say, a kever that's a gravesite in the middle of a field, for example. The Kohen goes into the field, unless there's a pointer, a tziyun kever, he might not realize that he's going to step on a kever. So when we say about Klal Yisrael mitzuyanim, we mean that they are different than the surroundings. And they became mitzuyanim sham, there in Mitzrayim. After mentioning the girsa that L'goy Gadol, that we became a great nation there in Mitzrayim, we want to figure out, why does the Baal Haggadah think that of all places, Dafka in Mitzrayim, we became a Goy Gadol, Mitzuyanim, special, unique? Some would say that the answer is that we developed a certain sensitivity towards the plight of others who are subjugated to all sorts of discrimination and anguish. We identify with them. And that deepened sense of Rachmanus, of empathy for the lower echelons, that was developed in Mitzrayim. The Harerei Kedem is going to take a slightly different approach to answer the question, what took place in Mitzrayim? How does the experience of exile of the Jewish people in Mitzrayim generate a goy gadol, and we come out of Mitzrayim after the Exodus with a certain greatness, mitzuyanim sham. The simple interpretation of mitzuyanim sham means that we can distinguish between the Jewish people and those around them. We can also add the word gadol to indicate that gadol means separate, great unto itself. For example, the Gemara Bava Metzia, which you'll see on the top of your page on the left column, speaks about a gadol as someone who's eino samach al shulchan aviv. It doesn't matter what age he is, but he becomes a gadol when he's independent. So the word gadol or gadlus means independence. And independence means that he doesn't depend upon others to look to the left and the right to see how society judges people, how people behave. He doesn't want to imitate anyone. He's a gadol. Gadol means he's original. He's not subject to the influence around him to try to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, to try to imitate those around him. He's gadol. As we said, he's independent, and he doesn't imitate those around him. So in a sense, the experience of Golus Mitzrayim then is meant to facilitate within the Jew a sense of independence. I am different than those around me. I may live within a society, but I remain unique. I'm not there to placate anyone. I don't have to wear any masks. I don't have to look like the Goyim. And we know how destructive it is for the Jewish people and the continuation of our people when we look around us and we try to imitate the Goyim. The Torah commands us, "B'chukoseim lo telechu." So what the Jewish people need desperately is godless, independence. We are who we are. We develop through the Torah the attributes that are appropriate for a Jew. We don't look around and try to imitate others. The Chafetz Chaim used to say that leadership means to teach the people how to break new ground, how to create a road for themselves that they could journey on. He calls it Kovshu derech li'atzmam. And that derech, that pathway is the pathway of godless, of greatness. Chazal say that the Jewish people in Mitzrayim, lo shinu es shmam, lo shinu es malbusham, lo shinu es lashonam, they were shomer, they were very careful to preserve their uniqueness. And as I indicated before, unfortunately, the Jewish people today, all over the world, are integrating with the Goyim. You know, the Jew works with the Goyim, and he's very impressed by them. He doesn't really see any difference between himself as a Jew and the others around him. He sees people that look like good people, a society that seems okay, although today we know how much anti-Semitism is growing in the world. But again, it's very easy to be allured into the world of the Goyim. Probably each and every one of us, if we went back to our earlier generations, we would realize how many we lost on the way. People settling in America who are now lost to the Jewish people entirely, intermarried. You hardly even know that there was any Jewish blood over there. My sister, who is at her husband's bedside in a hospital in Fort Lauderdale, down in Florida, if you could pray for my brother-in-law, Shmuel David Ben Ada, Ayin Daled Hey Ada, L'Refuah Shlema. So she reports that her husband, my brother-in-law, is being cared for by 4 nurses over the shifts of the day. One nurse is Catholic, married to a Jew. Another nurse claims she's Jewish, married to a Catholic. A third nurse, who's pure Catholic on all sides, pulls out from her phone a picture of her grandfather's graveside, Avram Yehuda ben so-and-so. And the fourth nurse is a descendant of some very, very important Jews, but she's totally Catholic. So this is typical. In my father's family, for example, one brother settled in Akron, Ohio. There's, mixed with the Goyim. I don't know if any of his descendants identify as Jews. And the other brother settled in New York to go to yeshiva. And he has tons of grandchildren and great grandchildren that are Shomer Torah mitzvahs. So the temptation of Golus is to want to imitate the Goyim, to be like them, to look up to them, to admire them, to integrate oneself with the Goyish Welt. But yet the Jewish people in Mitzrayim, where they were for 210 years, over 2 centuries, nevertheless they maintained their own independence and their own identity. And that expressed itself in many different ways. Lashona, Malbusham, etc., etc. Rashi says in his Perush al Torah that Mitzrayim is called a kur habarzel. You have a metal in its natural state is full of impurities, and you have to subject it to intense heat in a furnace until the impurities are removed. That's called a kur. Kur is in modern usage here in the state of Israel. They call it kur atomi. They call it it's a place with tremendous amount of firepower. And somehow, in Mitzrayim, which is counterintuitive, paradoxical, we became subjected to a Kura Barzel. We came out purified from Mitzrayim. And now the question is, what was it about existing in Mitzrayim that could have possibly made Mitzrayim into Kura Barzel in such a way that now we go down to Mitzrayim and we come out of there as a Goy Gadol, Mitzuyanim. The suggestion here is based on a very strange mashal of Rabbi Chia in the Gemara Brachas Lamed Beis. You know that the beginning of Sefer Dvarim, Moshe Rabbeinu's last speech before he ends his career, which is a Mussar Shmuz against the Jewish people to castigate them, and everything is biramiza, in allusions and hints. One of those is called Vidi Zahav, which is an allusion to the golden calf, meaning to the Cheta Egel, Vidi Zahav. And on this pasuk, V'di Zahav, Reb Chia offers a mashal, a simile, a very strange kind of simile, to explain what Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to the Ribono Shel Olam and to the people of Israel, V'di Zahav. Imagine the case of an Adam Echad Shaylo Ben. The father of a son loves his son, no question about it, fatherly love. But what does he do with his son? Reb Chia records that he gives him a sauna, sacho, and he puts all sorts of fragrant oils on his body. Hechilo vishkeu, he's very well fed, drinks all the fancy juices, whatever nectar, whatever he has to drink. Tololo kiss Al Savaro, he looks like a very special guy because the son is now wearing a medallion around his neck. And what does he do with his son? Hoshivo al Pesach shel Zonos. He placed him at the entranceway to a brothel. What do you think is going to happen? Mayasa ben v'lo yechta? I mean, the women are all over him. He's getting offers. They're offering him good deals. What do you think? He's not going to sin? Now, this mashal is very strange. Because how could it be that a loving father, would put his son in such a danger, a spiritual danger, to put him in that place? Is that the Rachmanis of a father? Moshe Rabbeinu was hinting to the Ribono Shel Olam that as our Father in heaven, he did to us like that Father did to his son in the Mashal, and he placed us in Mitzrayim, the lowest immoral civilization of its time, a place where Ervas Haaretz, as the Pasuk describes it, it's like the Pesach shel Zonos. So, Ribono Shel Olam, if you placed us there and exposed us to that society, as a person often says in Yiddish, "Was bin ich schuldig? Why am I guilty?" And Moshe Rabbeinu is implying that he's raising his finger against the Ribono Shel Olam, accusing the Ribono Shel Olam of really tripping up the people of Israel, as if to say that there was no doubt that they would worship the Egel. Because for 40 years, the people of Israel were exposed to the lowest level of society, of morality, namely to Mitzrayim. So this is what Moshe Rabbeinu is playing the role of an advocate, of a defense advocate, which is called Malamed Zchus. And he's in a sense throwing the ball back into HaKadosh Baruch Hu's court, saying as if you were responsible for the sin of Chet Egel. But the mashal is very, very difficult. What kind of compassionate father that's full of love for his son would expose his son to such dangers, to such spiritual dangers? Why would a father do such a thing? And in the Nimshal, why would HaKadosh Baruch Hu put us into that low society, that immoral society of Mitzrayim, where they worship the animals? How could it be that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would do such a thing, a loving father, and then expect us to come out of there and not worship an Egel? The answer to this question lies in an understanding of Mitzrayim of then, its culture, its status, and that will propel us to understand every single golus, every exile. We were exiled into Bavel, into Yavan, into Paras, into Rome. But the first Golus was Golus Mitzrayim, and Golus Mitzrayim will give us a picture, a concept that will shed a light on all the other Golios, because they all fit a certain pattern. What was Mitzrayim at that time? Number one, it was Malchus HaMoshelis Bekipa. We would call it today a superpower. The most powerful civilization and state on the globe. They had chariots, they had warriors, they had uniforms, they had spears, they had whatever you want. Not only that, Skulas Kol HaMedinos. They were exceptional in many ways compared to other states at that time in history. Number one, Be'oshra, they were very wealthy. Number two, Be'chachmasa, in their wisdom. And number three, B'nimuseha, in their code of law. In fact, the Pasuk in Malachim Aleph, when it wants to describe the Chachma, the wisdom of Shlomo HaMelech, it describes his wisdom by comparison to be on the level of the wisdom of Mitzrayim. And here we turn to Reish Chaf Beis. There is a wisdom in Mitzrayim that to this day, thousands upon years later, we still don't know the secrets that the Chartuvei Paro were able to embalm a dead body and it would be preserved. We don't have that science anymore. Says the Harerei Kedem that this is typical of every single Golus. You talk about the leading civilization of its time, it's going to be Bavel, the Babylonians, it's going to be Yavan, the Greeks, Greek culture, Greek art, Greek architecture, Greek wisdom. You talk about Rome controlled the entire world, most powerful country and civilization. Again, they were creative in so many different areas. And I would add Germany here, because you think of the Germans in the concept of lenses for the eyes, there's no one like them. And you could go on and on. So this seems counterintuitive. Why does God, when he sends us to punish us out to Golus, send us dafka to the greatest civilizations, the greatest societies of the time? You would have expected that if God wanted to give us a patch and punish us for our sins by sending us out to Golus, he would send us to the lowest of the low, some sort of poor nation, poverty-stricken, dull people without intelligence. That's where you deserve to be in Golus. But no, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does the opposite. He sends us to the tippy of the top of that period of time, whether it be the Egyptians, whether it be the Romans, whether it be the Greeks, whether it be the Germans, whether it be the Greeks and the Babylonians. These are the great powerful superpowers of the world in culture, in innovations, in technology, in science, in medicine, you name it. These are the greatest. Why does he send us dafka there? Fascinating question. It's a question that's a result of observation, but you have to really observe what's going on here and take Mitzrayim all the way to Rome and see the underlying common denominator of all these Golios. So the punchline is in the paragraph that starts with Mahalech HaDvarim. And he says that God gave us the Torah. We are the chosen nation to receive the chosen Torah that embodies all the wisdom, all the morality. And in Vaschanan Mi Goy Gadol, who could compare us to us? Ashalo Chukim Mishpatim Tzadikim, we have the greatest laws, the righteousness, the morality. But yet, very often, a certain thought creeps into our mind, a very destructive thought. Because we look around and we see the laws of the society at large, of the non-Jewish society. We see, for example, when I went to graduate school, I studied constitutional law. Fascinating. I remember writing a paper on federalism. I don't know if you're familiar, because I'm not sure in Canada they have federalism. Yeah, they probably do. But the question is states' rights and the federal government. Is it the federal government that controls the states' rights and gives the states their authority and their position, or is the opposite? The states have the inherent control of the country and they give certain rights over to the federal government with nafkaminas galore. A real lamda shechakira. And you look around at the society. People are not bad, right? They look good. They dress with a certain finesse, the best of society, and they have great achievements in every area. Nobel Prize winners going galore all over the world, all over the globe. You begin to think, wait a minute, we were the chosen people. God gave us the Torah. What makes us any different than the other nations? What makes us special? And this is where it all starts. This is the downfall of the Jew when these thoughts creep into his head and he begins to get an inferiority complex and think that the Jew can't shine a candle to the goyim. They're greater than we are. Chas v'sholom. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu does us a tzedakah. He does us a favor, a great favor, a divine favor. He brings us into the highest, most sophisticated societies, not the primitive, low lives, but the greatest societies of any time, so that we can experience on our body, on our physical bodies, what it means to be a guy, what it means to create a society that looks so beautiful on the outside, but is so rotten on the inside. This is the Kur HaBarzel, the refinery of Golus Mitzrayim, and for that matter, of every Golus. You think they have culture? You think they have morality? Look at the Egyptians. They rip babies from their mother's bosom and make them into bricks to fill in holes in the walls of buildings. This is the great culture of Mitzrayim? This is what you're impressed with? The Torah says, "K'mais eretz Mitzrayim asher yashavtim bo lo ta'asu." Don't you dare contemplate imitating Mitzrayim. Don't be impressed by their flashy presentations and their ostentatious, bills of laws and so forth and so on. They're rotten to the core. They're immoral. They're Jew haters. They're murderers. Ervas Haaretz. Now, I want to read with you a paragraph here that starts via ayin on the bottom right of page Reish Chav Beis. I may have shared this with you in the past, but every time I learn this, I get so nispal, so impressed, so amazed. This presentation that I'm about to share with you has had such an impact on my life, on my hashkafa, my worldview. And I hope you'll appreciate it as well. Let me say by introduction that Chazal have a dictum called Shivim Panim LaTorah. You can look at the Torah on the superficial level, Pshuto Shel Mikra, and you read the words, and you come to a certain conclusion, and that's correct. Ein Mikra Yotzim de Pshuto, but there's so many layers and layers of depth to the Torah. And creative thinking is encouraged. I want to learn with you this piece because it tells us how you can learn a pasuk in Chumash and not really necessarily appreciate the deeper meanings. Moshe was brought up in the castle of Paro by Bas Paro. He becomes mature, and now he goes out of the palace. Why? He wants to see, he knows he's Jewish, he wants to see the plight of the Jewish people. Vayetze elechav. Vayar ish mitzri. Please underline the word ish. Make ish ivri me'achav. He's witness to an Egyptian beating up one of his brothers. That's in Pasuk Yudal. We fast forward now just one Pasuk to Yud Beis. Vayifen ko v'cho. He turns this way, he turns that way, Moshe. Vayar ki ein ish. Nobody's around. Vayaches ha-mitzri. Vayit mimeu b'chol. Rabbosai, what does this mean? Vayifen kol v'chol vayar kienish. I don't have time to hear your input right now, but I'm sure every one of you is thinking exactly what I thought. No one's around. Moshe Rabbeinu is under the misimpression that no one sees him. Never he finds out the next day that Dosav Aviron are going to reveal to him that, you're a murderer. But right now he looks left and right. He sees no one's around. He's got a carte blanche, and he takes the advantage, takes the moment, and he's the I would call it the Bear Kahana of his day, and he kills the Mitzri. But there's something very strange here. If you read the pasuk meticulously, initially the pasuk says Yud Aleph, Vayar Ish Mitzri. The word Ish is there. Then you look at the next pasuk and it says Vayach Es HaMitzri, and the Torah omits the word Ish. But the answer to this problem lies in the three words Vayifen kol v'chol. Moshe Rabbeinu sees the Mitzri. All of Tanakh, the word Ish, there are many different words in Tanakh for a human being. There's Enosh, and there's Adam, and many others, and the greatest of them all, indicative of greatness, is Ish. Ish means Chashivus. Moshe Rabbeinu sees this Mitzri and calls him an Ish. Why does he assume that this Mitzri is so chashuv? You could just imagine. The Mitzri is probably 6'5", with broad shoulders, wearing a uniform with, all his achievements, dangling from his bosom. Good-looking guy, represents, the best of the Egyptians, of the Egyptian society. Wow, this guy's impressive. He's an Ish. Make Ish Ivri. He's killing one of the Jews. He's beating him up. So you know what? Moshe Rabbeinu Vayifen Ko V'cho. He looks this Mitzri in the eye. We would say he shatzes him up. Who are you? What are you? You think you're great. You think you represent the epitome of society, of law and order, of morality, of great achievements, of a great civilization. Vayifen ko v'cho, vayar ki enish. Moshe Rabbeinu realizes that this is not an Ish. Vayaches HaMitzri. You're not an Ish. You're an animal. You know that Aristotle defines an animal as a being that has 4 legs. But Moshe Rabbeinu knew better than that. Moshe Rabbeinu understood there's such a thing as an animal with 2 legs. Look at the Germans. They seem so impressive. Nobel Prize winners, advances in society, in medicine, in so many different areas. And who are they? Vayar ki ein ish. They are beasts on 2 legs. HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings us into Golus, to the greatest of civilizations, the epitome, the creme de la creme, the culmination of human achievements. And here is the challenge. Are we going to be impressed by what we see on the outside, on the uniforms, just beautiful, the sun shines off their uniforms, bounces off. Are we going to be impressed by their success in business? Impressed by their laws, their culture? And then, chas v'sholem, we're on the way down. And that's what happened in America. But Hashem says to the Jewish people, if you succeed and are victorious in this challenge, you will realize that the greatest of societies is just a big bluff. It's a facade that hides the fact that they are willing and capable of reaching the lowest level of morality that you could imagine. A chaya al shtei raglayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the Torah. He separates us from all the other nations. That's the yesod of Torah. And this is the lesson that we have to learn with each golus. To understand that we are mitzuyanim. As we said before, mitzuyanim means we're different. We have a greatness that doesn't mean necessarily that we built the Colosseum in Italy, or the Arc de la Triomphe of Paris, or all the other architectural achievements. That's not our thing. The pasuk says, "Mi goy gadol asher lo elokim krovim elav." We are great because of our relationship to the Almighty. And God responds to our tefillos. B'chol karei love mi goy gadol asher lo chukim mishpatim tzadikim. Our godless is through Torah, through tefillah, through our closest to Hashem. And we are the goy gadol. And we should never, ever doubt it, never forget it, never question it. I'd like to fast forward to page Reish Chaf Gimel on the bottom left. Vanitzak el Hashem. Right, we're darshaning the Parsha of Rabbi Ovi at the Seder table. And we cry out to Hashem. The Harerei Kedem lays down a fundamental rule of thumb with regard to Golus Mitzrayim and with regard to the mitzvah of remembering Mitzrayim, Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. Because there's something about the Geula from Mitzrayim, that redemption from Egypt, that sets the tone for every redemption, especially for the ultimate redemption, the Ketz HaYomim, Shetovu B'mheirav Yamein. The Gemara tells us in Perek HaChelek in Sanhedrin, Ein ben David ba ad sheyisyashu min ha'geula. We reach the lowest state, and we're at the point of Yeish. Klal Yisrael v'nitzak el Hashem reached the point of Yeish, of total despair. They didn't even pray; they really just let out a cry. V'nizak tza'aka, sort of like comes up from the belly. And Dafka at that point, when there's Yeish from Geula, that's when Mashiach comes. That's when Ben David will come. We have a basic halacha in Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim of maskil bignus. We begin with something pejorative, something negative, In a certain sense, we are admitting that we are not up there on the totem pole. We're a little bit down. And the Gemara in Sota with Rashi expound upon this. Kigona Rami Oved Over. The opening line in Parshas Kitova that we read at the Seder table is Arami. We're referring to an Aramean. Avi. He's our great grandfather. And he's an Oved. Oved means with an aleph, he's a destructive force. Who is this Arami that is our Alta Zeda that is so destructive? It's none other than Lavan. We don't like to think, we're a little uncomfortable, that Lavan was our Alta Zeda. Lavan Bikesh Lakar Sakol. Lavan fits into the category of like a Haman or Nazi Germany or the worst enemies of the Jewish people. That's Lavan. Lavan is an idol worshiper. In fact, he accuses Yaakov of stealing his idols. Can you imagine you steal someone's God? I mean, it's such stupidity. What is maskil begnus? The Harerei Kedem suggests, and I've never seen it anywhere, that maskil begnus means vidui. It's a kind of a confession in which we confess the low origins of our people. Vidui, on the other hand, is not an end unto itself, but rather it's part of a mitzvah of tshuva. So maskil begnus now takes on a whole new meaning. We are involved on this night in tshuva. Albeit it's not Yom Kippur, it's a different kind of tshuva than the tshuva of Yom Kippur. It's, in a sense, a national communal confession about our low origins as Ovdei Avodah Zarah. And the Gemara establishes in Sanhedrin, and that's how the Rambam paskins, that Ein Yisrael Nigolim El B'tshuva. If on this night of Pesach we want to bring about the Geula, as the Lubavitchers would sing, we want Mashiach now, because tonight is the night of Geula, then for all generations to come, we have to realize that the key to bringing the Geula is tshuva. Ein Yisrael Nigolim El B'tshuva. And now we're on page Reish Chav Dalet. It says, "Vanitzak el Hashem Elokeinu," and it says, "V'tal shavasam Elokim min avoda." Rabbeinu Bechai has a radical interpretation, revolutionary, of what does it mean, "V'tal shavasam el Elokim." He suggests that it means this is a remez, an allusion to the ultimate geula, because the ultimate geula depends upon our tshuva. Will we do tshuva? And says Rabbeinu Bechai, indeed, in Mitzrayim we did tshuva. So Vatal Shavos Elokim, our tefillos were accepted on high, and finally, after so many decades, hundreds of years, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has compassionate and brings about the Geula. It's because we did tshuva. Where's the tshuva? Moshe Rabbeinu tells the people on the 10th of Nisan. Here it's almost Rosh Chodesh, so 10 days down the line, to take the God of Mitzrayim. Mishchu k'chulechem tzon. The tzon, sometimes it's hard to believe. Who could worship an animal? But yet, I don't know, it's probably 1/3 of the population of the world today worships animals. I don't know, the Hindus, I don't know, they worship the cow, and whatever it is. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, take their God and slaughter their God. You remember, of course, the famous Chazal that the Jews stood at Yam Suf, and the angels came in front of the Rebbeinu Shel Kisakov, they said, Halolu of the Avazar, Halolu of the Zar. What's the difference between the Jew and the guy? It means that the impact of the society, the idolatry of Mitzrayim was so intense on the Jewish people that you couldn't even see the difference between a Jew and a guy. So now HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm going to give you the opportunity for a tikkun, for tshuva. You're going to take their God and you're going to slaughter their God. And you're not going to be impressed. You're not going to be afraid of the siren. Forget about the sirens. You won't be afraid of the Egyptians. See where my head is. So the ultimate redemption from Mitzrayim was through tshuva, says Rabbeinu Bachai. And that's why our tefillos were accepted on high. And therefore, when we took the tleh and we slaughtered it, which was the Avodah Zarah Mitzrayim, we did tshuva, and now Hashem is going to say, you know what? For all geulos, ein Yisrael nigolim el tshuva. Mashiach will come after we el b'tshuva, after we do tshuva. And this is part and parcel of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. To learn what, on this night, what brought about the Gula and what will bring about the Gula. Now, I have to tell you, Rabbi Osai, we don't do things to bring about the Gula. That's not our shtick. You know, if young girls want to light Shabbos candles, you know, Lubavitch style, that's fine. If that's going to bring about the Gula, none of my business. But we don't choose to, you know, let's do this, let's do that. Because, you know, the strange thing is the Beis HaLevi asked this question, my Rebbe's great-grandfather, Rabbi Yoshe, he said the following: why is it that on Pesach we have Mos Chita? You know, there's no Mos collection for Lulav and Esrog, or for Sukkah, or for Sifrei Torah, for Shavuos. And why is it that we open the night of the Seder, Kol Dichven Yesei V'Yiftach? We open the door and we invite the guests. We don't find that not on Sukkot, not on Shavuos. Why dafka on Pesach? So the Beis HaLevi quotes a pasuk in Yeshaya Novi: Tzion b'mishpati padeh v'shaver b'tzedakah. The skula of tzedakah will bring about the geula. That's what the Novi tells us. So the Beis HaLevi asks, very nice. On Erev Pesach, we're collecting Mos Chitin. We are inviting the guests to join the Seder. They don't have a Seder. And that's going to bring about the geula. So that's why we choose to do a mitzvah in order to bring about the geula. Says the Beis HaLevi, there's only one exception. One night of the year we choose a Geula power to bring about the Geula. That's the night of Geula, because tonight is the night that sets the pattern, sets the tone for every Geula, and certainly for the Geula L'Yasid Lava. And the truth of the matter is, Rabbi Sai, with this I'll conclude for today. I hope you got something out of it. What we have on the night of Seder, Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, guess what? We don't complete that mitzvah. The mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim is a partial mitzvah, and it's not a full Kiyum mitzvah. Because the Navi tells us that ultimately, at the time of Mashiach, the Geula of the end of days will overshadow the Geula of Mitzrayim. On this night of Pesach, our mitzvah is not Sipur Geulas Mitzrayim, but rather Sipur HaGeula. But we can't yet tell the story of the Geula because we haven't seen the Geula. We hope that we're seeing it now. We're seeing unbelievable miracles. On the other hand, there's a lot of pain and anguish. Our chayalim are out there in the boondocks. I have no idea where my son is today. 2 people told me they think he's in Iran, but I can't talk to him by phone. He's in a crack unit called Sheshesh Tesha, for any of you who've heard of it. My grandson, last I heard from him, was in Gaza, but I think now they're sending him to Lebanon. People in my shul here in Neve Shamir ask me to pray for their children, for their sons who are on the front lines. So on the one hand, we're seeing miracles. And if you don't believe me, you have to read a letter. I should really send it to you from Hillel Fuld. He's so beautiful, so great. The miracles that we're seeing in front of our eyes. But on the other hand, Beit Shemesh, on today is what? Today is Wednesday. On Monday night, I took a bus from Beit Shemesh to Yerushalayim. If you know a little bit about the road there, we passed IKEA, and the bus driver stops the bus. And the people in the bus, I didn't see it. They say, look at the rockets there. And I got off the bus together with some of the other people. But we're seeing miracles. I don't know if you heard about the miracle in the Beyond Shtivel. There was a what do they call it? A night of learning. There were thousands of Hasidim. The rocket hit the roof of the Beyond Shtivel. They have to restore it. But it goes on and on and on. It's endless. So we're not minimizing the pain. Last night, a couple was killed. They tried to get up to the safe room with their walkers, and they couldn't get there on time. See, Hiratzon, let's end with a tefillah. We hope that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will accept our prayers, our tshuva, and will be zochet to the geula, like the geula of Mitzrayim, but even greater than the geula of Mitzrayim. B'mherav Yameinu Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope it was meaningful for you.